People who are making 200K plus a year, what do they do? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1, airline pilot. About 300K, 350K, depending on how much I work. That's after 28 years of airline flying and 16 with the current one. Bachelor's degree and FAA licenses. About 3 years of flying jobs to build hours before first airline job. Initial flying job paid 8 tires chachar. Minimum wage at the time was 5.25. For comparison, first airline job was 17 R, and I think minimum wage was still the same. You can count on 75 chars per month minimum and about 85 on average. Benefits are good to very good, depending on airline. More time off than regular office jobs, but working weekends and holidays is the norm. You're also away from home a lot. Story 2. My best friend is the manager of a parts supply store. He gets a nice fat salary plus a monthly bonus based on their sales each month. The thing is, the industry we're in and where we live, the salesmen don't have to do, the business comes to them. They did 4 $4 in sales last month, and my friend got a 30.0 bonus. On top of his salary, he's got that 2 months in a row. On top of clearing 200K, he has no bills. He uses a company truck, so his insurance and gas is paid for. He doesn't have his own vehicle. Uses a company phone. He splits the rent and groceries with his GF. IDK how much he spends on gambling, weed, and booze. But if he slowed down on that, he could be a millionaire by 40 easily. Maybe multimillionaire. Guy loves donating to DraftKings, though. Story 3. My husband and I are aircraft mechanics making around 375-400, combined with minimal, a bit of overtime. Work is tough on the body and mind, but it took us both 18 months of school, cost 10K each, to get our licenses. We get 7.5 weeks paid off a year, and we'll get more as we stay with the company longer. Story 4. I'm a clinical psychologist who works primarily as a therapist. My fee is $300 per session, and my sessions last 50 minutes. I have about 15 sessions per week. Half of them take place in an office I sublet, and the other half are over Zoom from home. I have very, very low overhead, so it's a very high profit margin. Total dream career. Story 5, I make 237K a year, and I'm a machine learning solutions engineer. Mostly Google Cloud, but other platforms as well. I learned on the job BTW and did a lot of certification work on Google Cloud, so this job does not need a degree. Only about 1 or 3 of my colleagues have degrees, so it's a good area for those without degrees, pays well, and hours are not crazy. Story 6. It's shocking how much money can be made in the car business on the sales side with only a high school diploma. Not here to debate the ethics but I work for a family-owned dealership, and I know of at least 4 people in sales that have made that last year in various positions. Story 7. 560K plus, I wrote and reviewed documentation telling people how to build software. I was a staff software engineer at Google. I retired last year. Now I'm building a social media platform where all your data is secret except from your friends, including secret from me, the platform provider, and there's no algorithm pushing content or ads at you. Story 8. Owner of multiple small businesses here. That's how it's done. Start your own thing. You would be amazed how much people are willing to pay for menial, undesirable tasks to be completed. Edit, for those asking, I won't give specifics of what my service businesses are, but the ideas are not hard to find. Examples. My local Facebook groups are always looking for dryer vent cleaners and handymen. Those aren't my niches. I always look into opportunities when presented. Both can clear 100, 200 an hour easily. I started my currently biggest venture out of my own necessity during the Great Recession of 2008. It was something I already knew how to do, and I quickly realized that I could make more money in a 6-hour day than I could working a full week at my former job. Nowadays, my 2-person crews gross somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 a day on average. Of course, there's work and expenses on my end, but it is steady, reliable money. A more recent service venture of mine now nets on average $200, $400 an hour. I also own an internet marketing consulting firm. I sold my first agency a few years ago and started a new one recently. My rate is $1,000 an hour for consultations. I do wish I had more of those hours though, LOL. Opportunity has a tendency to look you in the eyes quite often. The trick is changing your mindset to stare it right back at it and act. Story 9, Doc, 500K. Most days, I try and mop up the mess that is our healthcare system while dealing with very ungrateful, low-functioning, and entitled humans who see me as a gatekeeper. As an ER doc, no one will ever say thanks, no one will ever appreciate what you did, and you will always be judged and second-guessed. But you will get to walk away from the hospital with no obligations, and the pay RDR is great. You also get to hang out with the absolute best nurses, paramedics, techs, and other docs in the world. I work 12, 14 days out of a month and generally like my gig. Every once in a while, I get to make a meaningful difference in a life, but it's a job filled with emotional trauma, and every day I shake my head and wonder how we got here. Story 10. Dated a guy who was clearing that easily, I'd say significantly more. He worked for his dad's industrial company. Basically, all he did was drive things around in his pickup truck and occasionally moved around with a forklift. 95% of the time, he could be found hanging out at their office just chatting with people, literally doing nothing. His house was free, his trucks and bikes, boat, trailer, four-wheelers, side-by-sides, all free from his dad. Story 11. I'm a union plumber working Comerical Industrial Construction. 5 years of trade school and countless hours working on my torch skills to stand out from the rest. I do a lot of high-tech and medical work. I make foreman scale, which is about 71 an hour with occasional gangster overtime, and then about 37 in benefits, which include full family medical and a solid pension as well. I've already made a little over 85K this year, and that's with taking about 2 weeks off. Story 1 and 2. The Australian Tax Office publishes the top 10 most lucrative occupations you can have based on the average taxable income in that occupation. They are: surgeon, average taxable income per annum of $460, $356. Anesthetist, $431, $193. Financial dealer, $373, $733. Internal medicine specialist, $340, $729. Psychiatrist, $276, $545. Other medical practitioners, $255, $754. Mining engineer, $214, $365. Judicial or other legal professionals, $204, $934. Chief Executive Officer or Managing Director, $197, $720. Financial Investment Advisor or Manager, $185, $834. I imagine these salaries are pretty similar in other first world countries too. Of course, there are some people in other occupations who make more. For instance, there are a few actors who make a lot more money than surgeons, even though most actors make far less. But if you want a surer way to make 200K plus a year, getting into one of the occupations above is the way to go. Story 1-3. Crypto investor. I put 70 CKY into a crypto hedge fund in 2017. I'm currently receiving quarterly distributions of 350K, and that is after taxes. The fun part is that I can donate a boatload to charities to offset my taxes. I'm saving everything. Animals, homeless, the local park, running trails, veterans, disabled, at-risk women, etc. I took some of that crypto money and invested in a company that is bringing back dinosaurs. Whatever timeline this is, it's nuts. Story 1-4. Our household makes 280K, 320K US, depending on bonuses, stocks. I make 100K working for big tech. My partner makes 100K working in tech for a non-tech company. For me, I started my career making 50K per year, and it took me 6 years and a few job hops acquiring skill experience to get to 200K. My partner was in a completely different field and took one of my old jobs as I was quitting. Story 1-5. Cybersecurity in a senior analyst role. My TC is in the mid-200s, fully remote, and I'm not in a H-call area. The path to cybersecurity in my role starts in IT help desk to other tech roles. There are no entry cybersecurity roles, contrary to what all of the scam YouTube videos, boot camps will tell you. Unless you are a rare unicorn, that is how to enter this field. Story 1-6, senior software engineer. FA-ing pipeline, i.e. startup. Amazon, any other FA-ing. Leadership role at a different medium-sized company, 1-2 years at each. Currently working towards staff, Sussor 2, at non-Fayang that can pay up to 300K. Fayang pays way more, but the workload matches. FIANG is an outdated term. It used to refer to 5 specific companies, but that was like 15 years ago, and the industry shifted. Now it just refers to a class of companies at the very tippity top of the pay grade. Still including the OG5, most people exclude Netflix though. But add in Nvidia, Uber, Tesla, Jane Street, etc. Story 17, I am a marketing director. I make $225K a year with a 20% annual bonus on top of that, and am in my late 30s. I went to college and majored in English and did not go to grad school. I started an entry-level office job at $50K out of college and got higher salaries from there. I do not have any particular set of skills. I'm not an engineer, a lawyer, a pilot, or in tech or construction. I have a pretty standard MF job, prob 50 hours where I'm week, with medium stress level and work hybrid. I am surrounded by colleagues with BAs who make the same or more than me. The two ways to increase your salary faster in the regular office job world is to 1, change companies, jobs every 2-3 years, and 2, be willing to relocate when you do that. Companies do not like promoting from within, especially for higher paying jobs. They will always be enamored by some outsider they barely know versus someone who they already know, who is reliable and very good. They've already seen what you can do, which to them is the best you can do, despite how wrong that may be. Learn how to write a great resume, it is truly a skill, and how to interview well, an even more valuable skill. Apply for anything and everything and be willing to move. Only looking in one area or one city infinitely limits your opportunities. ESP, when you are younger, be flexible. If you feel you are ready to be promoted but aren't getting positive signs from your boss, start applying elsewhere immediately. Aggressively negotiate salary offers. Always get counter offers. Go to another team and learn even more skills at a different company. Rinse and repeat. Story 18. My husband makes a base salary of around $240K. It's more when they win work, which is basically like commission. And as someone who has zero clue about finance or what a managing director for an accounting consulting firm does, he deals with a lot of other people's money, puts it into spreadsheets, makes sure everything is the same color, never gets off the phone, does something called memos, but they are not short little memos. They are long 89-page reports, talks in circles to a bunch of people in China, Japan, Australia, at all hours of the day, night, because they have zero regard for the fact that his company is in the US, gets yelled at by rich old white dudes who have no boundaries for any hour of the day. Oh, and he says, let's table that for another time and tie it all up like a million times a day. I'm a speech therapist in an elementary school that works with intense intervention preschool through 6th graders. I'd never survive at his job, LOL. Story 19, I work in corporate finance as a senior analyst. With my bonus, I make about $125K, but now once you hit director, usually mid to late 30s if you're working your way up, then you easily pull $225K. The stepping stone between my role and that role is manager, a SAR manager, which would be about $150 to $170K. We make a lot because the work is boring and no one wants to do it. Story 20, district manager for a family-owned auto repair shop with 4 locations. All 4 locations managers report to me, just over $200K in salary, plus a company car and fuel covered. Lots of responsibility and stress. I enjoy my job, but sometimes I miss the days of being a lower-level employee and not having almost everything rest on my shoulders. Story 21. Not me, but my stepdad makes around $250K per year. Computer programmer who wrote all the software his company uses, and they have been bought and sold a few times to larger companies who wanted said software. He's been with the company over 30 years and worked 60-80 hours a week for a lot of that time before it started paying off for him. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Story 22. Head of marketing at a big tech, based in the EU, making $386 a year after 15 years of working. I came up with a simple way of getting ahead in my industry. Don't get dragged into doing lots of small bits of work. Have a team for doing that. Instead, I focus on doing one thing really well each month and then using that to prove the effectiveness of the team. I don't get dragged down by data. Also, being a really nice person, looking after my team, and genuinely caring about the people I work with, it's worked really well. Story 23. Dad made this in 2000s, owned 3 businesses: paint store, carpentry business, painting business. Since he controlled some of the supply chain for his service businesses, it was like double dipping in savings. which helped the profit margins. Didn't use marketing services to promote the business, just good work and word of mouth. He retired at 53 years old. Story 24. I used to be a criminal attorney working for others, solos and firm. In 5 years went from 40K, 2013, and topped out at 110K working for a sweatshop handling 60 matters plus at once. Switched to commercial litigation and started at 125, 5 years later making 240K and about to get profit sharing. I started handling tax disputes and feel so much better with my job security. Much easier work and more academic. Less stressful than dealing with the criminally accused, but I owe a lot of my client facing success and confidence. Courtroom presence to criminal law practice. Story 25. Started investing in foreclosure property at local mortgage foreclosure auctions in 2007. Built it into owner-managed property management company. Little bit of commercial property and roughly 150 single-family rental homes scattered about the relatively small city I live in. All licensed, permitted, occupied. Loads of work, but a truly recession-proof life with a nice retirement plan. Story 26, I make about 250, 350K depending on the year. Last year, I actually netted about 400K as a freelance copywriter, consultant, and content creator. I used to work in editorial as an editor at a fashion publication. I started about 15 years ago with my first salaried position in NYC paying 52K, which I assume was rich because it was more than both of my parents' salaries combined. I regularly worked 70 hours a week for about 3 years. I climbed up the ranks while bartending and creating content on the side, which went from 1 to 10, 20 hours in 2014, 2018, then 50, 75 KWR through 2022, and now amounts to about 100 KWR, even though I have a fairly small following and very little growth. I pivoted to copywriting when I got laid off during the pandemic and worked with my partner, who has agency experience, to help me with more technical stuff. Now it's a regular mix of all three, and I'm on track to make Gurn 375K this year, despite my friends and colleagues who didn't pivot to multiple revenue streams getting very little work. Story 27. Large national GC, construction, VP base is 320K, 10K car allowance with a non-guaranteed annual bonus that is typically 10%, 20% of base salary in a HQL area. My starting salary as 2006 was 33K, and up until 2 years ago, my salary was just under 200K all in as senior PM. After almost 20 years with the same company, I realized what so many others knew already. Significant salary increases are really only possible if you change companies. It's very unfortunate, IMO, but it seems to be that way across most industries. Construction can be a very lucrative industry, and depending on the role, isn't as grueling as most think. Story 28. College professor, business discipline. I teach some classes for MIMOWAS 4 months out of the year, so apart from some university committees, etc., the other 8 months my time is my own to work on research. Pushing 300K to benefits. Less than 10 years into it. We've seen some weird salary trends, so newbies in my field started about this same amount at flagship state schools at this point. Story 29. Automotive buyer. I buy cars at auction for a dealership group. I started in 2010 making 45K a year, then moved on to different dealerships where eventually I landed at a group in 2019. Started at 100K, and after about 5 years was making about 240, 260K, depending on how sales went. Just moved on to a new dealership group that's much larger. I've got a bachelor's degree, but it has nothing to do with my job. A lot in this industry do not have degrees. Story 30. I make 230K as a director of product at a large entertainment company. Been here 6-7 years. Started as a contract PM making 45-hour, bump and roll changes outlined below. Contractor 45-hour, 55-hour PDM, 110K, 140K, senior PDM, 140K, 180K, dear, 210K, 230K. I love product management and think there are so many verticals and horizontals you can grow in. Story 31. Tax accountant. I started my firm with 3 other buddies after plus earn 8 years of experience in a private firm. It took us +4 years to build a solid client base and reach the 200K per year. Now we are surfing on 250K, 300K, working 40-45 hours per week in average throughout the year. You work more before and after vacations to catch up, and you need to deal with having a 15-people business, HR, etc. The great part is that we pay ourselves 110K per year because that's what we need to live comfortably, and we pool the remaining 600K in real estate. We are not planning on doing this forever. Story 32, plant operator. No degree needed. Half my pay is from overtime, but I still enjoy more days off per month than an office worker. Plus, I get 7 days off in a row per month if I choose, and can still break into 200K. Also have good benefits and a month's worth of PTO on top of my scheduled days off, half the year. Only part that sucks is you need to be in an area where there are chemical petro plants. Rotating shift work and 12 HR shifts. Laid back for the most part and a lot less dangerous than you think. Story 33. They're offshoring everyone else's jobs to third world countries for pennies on the dollar. Firing perfectly good people who have dedicated their lives to a product because they can hire someone half as good for a quarter the price in India. Basically ruining their fellow countrymen's livelihoods so they can make a quick buck before the company tanks. Business and Story 34. Computational linguistics. Basically, coaching AI on how to communicate in recognizable human language. AI isn't as smart as you think. It's just a mathematical recall program at this point that's fooling people into thinking there's a singularity coming up soon. We are still very far away from that. Story 35. My dad is a chemical engineer who works for the two big waste disposal companies who trade him back and forth, Republic and Waste Management. And he's good at his job, won like 5 awards from both companies for best manager. So he'll take a job with WM, work for about 4 or 5 years, and then Republic will want him back for opening new landfills, or to take over ones with problems, or needs someone certified to deal with storing dangerous waste. And in return, he asks for a 25-30K bump in his current salary. And then WM will tend to do the same later on. Started at like $80 a year when he started at WM back in 2003. He's now making about $330K before taxes at Republic. Story 36, 200K flat. I was the third employee at a small, unprofitable group within a large company in the advertising and media space. 16 years of grinding, being on call 24/7, and losing a marriage. Later, I now make this money. I had a vision to make our group profitable, and the company embraced me. I took our department from being a 1-to-1 at $5 million debt liability to being a $50 million profit center. Given that L, I'm vastly underpaid to criminal levels. But I grew up in extreme poverty, and I'm not traditionally educated, and I'm amazed where I am, so I'm grateful. Story 37, software engineer. Big tech, not FAing. I'm at year 12 in my career. My salary progression is as follows. 67K, 60K, 78K, 90K, new job, 100K, 115K, 125K, new job, 132K, 139K, 150K, new job, 165K, 215K, new job in non-FAANG big tech, varies based on RSUs, but fluctuates between 400K, 500K. I live in a MCOL area without big tech jobs or big tech salaries, chopped in small mid-sized tech companies for a decade. I never considered big tech because my wife and I never considered moving, certainly not to some place like SF or NYC. However, COVID changed everything. All the big tech companies started hiring remote. It took about a year of on and off studying and practicing and a couple of failed interviews before finally landing one. Man, what a world of difference in comp, obviously. I never understood the allure of big tech right out of college. For anyone curious, my only caveat is that you will have substantially more fun and more personal growth at small, mid-sized companies. Working in big tech makes you good at working in big tech. It doesn't necessarily make you better or more agile at building software. Story 38, I design, test, and update payment systems. Designing is probably the most challenging part because that takes some thought and effort. Testing and updating is like 95% waiting while different people try to throw a wrench in things. Overall, pretty easy from my perspective. I spend a good amount of the workday messing around or napping when I should probably be doing something more productive. But it does require a bunch of esoteric knowledge, And the stakes are pretty high as far as catching issues since my segment of the system alone moves trillions of dollars daily. Story 39. Commercial cinematographer. I shoot beauty products in New York City using giant robots and high-speed, slow-motion cameras. I work 12, 15-hour days and sometimes more, which is not a badge of honor, but just shows how much daily rentals of equipment are compared to labor, to make the best use of equipment on a cost-per-day basis. My days are nonstop and usually extremely stressful because of the high shot load and constant technical troubleshooting. Sometimes I can go to the bathroom. I love my crew. They keep me going and also work nonstop. My existence literally rests on their shoulders, and I value them as much as family. I hope they realize that. Somebody is always keeping us hydrated and well-fed. The job keeps me young, fit, and grateful. It's a great and very rare career path. Story 4260K. Palliative doctor. Palliative care is a specialty that focuses on quality of life and suffering. Part of my job is to help patients with serious illness like cancer and treat high symptom burden, i.e. pain, nausea, anxiety. We also address psychosocial pain and existential crisis with chaplains and therapists. However, the thing we are most known for is to talk about goals of care, which is meant to be talking about the patient's prognosis and finding out what is important to them, and talk about living and dying. Unfortunately, sometimes it can get perversed into being trying to make a patient understand that what we are doing is futile care and will not change the outcomes, and we need to go on to hospice talk. Story 41. I help start small businesses and hand them over, along with the bulk of the revenue, to a partner, and I live off the small percentage I'm left with. Car rental, Orange Grove, coffee shop, landscaping, pool service, food cart, corner store, etc., all in particular clusters around the world, corresponding with where I've lived and where I visit often. Story 42. I groom dogs. My old salon had over $400K in revenue in a year, but had a few employees. New salon is just me, but I'll be over the $100K in revenue my first year open, and my expenses are pretty low. It can be a lucrative career if you're good at running a business, but often I see poorly run salons with passionate groomers, but terrible business sense. It's a hard physical and skilled trade that I highly doubt will fall to robots or AI, and will still be in demand as people treat their pets like human children. Story 43, range right below and a tad above the $200K mark depending on my hours. Healthcare IT consultant, essentially a system admin for specific software. BA degree, 1 year at the company itself, then 2 years working for a hospital in the FTE role that I now consult for. I enjoy it, rarely go over 40 hours a week, and am like 90% remote when I do go in. It's travel, so I get miles hotel points and can get a hotel as close to work as possible, so no commute. I dislike that I have no upward mobility, so I feel stagnant, but I'm also in such a great spot with work-life balance. Story 44. Currently working in the UK in technology pre-sales role, making about $225K cash, plus the 100K RSUs. Left school at 16 and went into investment banking earning $900K a year. Progressed through various roles across the business and technology divisions in financial services to the point where, after 20 plus years, I had learned enough of the industry and how it works to make me an efficient technical seller into the same industry. No formal qualifications beyond the GCSEs I took at 16, ignoring various tech certifications I've picked up over the years in Java and other technologies. I believe the reason I do well in this space is the ability to be the person who can deconstruct deeply technical concepts and solutions into simple explanations that the C-suite and business folk can understand, but also turn to the technical folks in the room and hold the fort and get deep into the technicalities of whatever I'm selling. Story 45. Back when he was making like $260-300K a year, my dad was the CTO of one of the largest nonprofit accounting firms on the Eastern Seaboard. Once the firm got acquired on chart merged, his title and salary dropped. I can't remember his position title, but he was the guy that had to travel all around the US and some territories to run training and ensure IT cohesion, continuity among all the offices. Then they got acquired, merged again, and his title, salary dropped again. And I have no idea what he was actually doing, LOL. But he was important enough to still be a salaried employee at 70 YO and working 100% remote. Still like 60, 80 hours a week, but that's because he was one of those I'll quit working when I'm dead type folks. But TBH, if there is some kind of afterlife, I'd bet that he is still working. Story 46. Heavy equipment technician, specifically a field tech on heavy civil equipment, long hours, and the body will pay for it when I'm older. But to any young folks, the trades are very lucrative, and the more expensive you become and the more specialized repairs you can do, the easier it is on the body. Story 47. Software sales, huh? But that includes expected bonus. Many sales jobs are 50-50, meaning half is salary, the other half isn't guaranteed. So a 300K OTE doesn't mean you'll make 300K. It means you have a 150K salary, and if you do as many sales as your quota, your commissions would add up to the remaining amount. But you can do less or more depending on your performance. So with a 300K OTE, you could end up with 180K, 250, or 400, etc. Story 48. Pricing. I analyze commercial terms in new proposals or existing contracts, mostly proposing or reviewing foreign exchange, inflation, discounting, margin, etc. I have no formal financial or accounting education or training. I was in a different line of work for the first 20 years of my career and assumed I was trapped in that kind of roles unless I was willing to take a huge pay cut. I've been in this role for almost 10 years now, and it aligns so much better with my strengths. Best 10 years of my professional life. Story 49. Not me, but my wife. She does medical affairs work for biotech startups. That means she essentially convinces doctors and hospitals to work with her companies in doing clinical trials and then coordinates with them to make sure that all of the work they do follows the written protocols. She also does a lot of ghostwriting and editing for journal articles about the devices she works with. She could technically get paid more in a large company but prefers startups for the better culture and potential payouts. If her startups get acquired, there can be a large payday. Story 50. Corporate development for a tech company. The hours suck and the stress while working is nearly constant, but I hit 200K in 5 years out of school without moving to HCOL and get to travel to cool places, so that can be neat sometimes. Currently at 250K, about 6.5 AOE. Hoping for 300K plus in the next 4 years, but with the way the economy's going, and a good chunk of my variable pay being based on financial performance, we'll just have to see. Story 51. Director level in software consulting to training. I just passed up a senior VP role that would have put me around 350K 400 because they tried to position starting PTO was 2 weeks, 5 days in office. Hard no from me. Money isn't everything, and that red flag of zero concern for work-life balance made me quite happy with low 200s and amazing benefits, sure culture for now. It did sting to say no at first. Story 52. Hubs makes about that in total comp. He receives some comp in stocks. He's an electrical engineer by training, but is now head of operations for a specialty manufacturing company. Overall, he likes his job, but he thinks he's got about 5 years left in this particular position. It's fulfilling, but also very demanding and stressful. He wants to stay with his company past that, and he'll be nearing retirement age in 5 years anyway, but more on a project consulting basis than a leadership role. Story 53. One of my coworkers makes 200K while Meyer. He's the second lowest pay grade in the mill, but works 16-hour shifts every day, coming in while sick, literally never took any time off that wasn't PTO. We later found out he had some generic condition that made it so he only needed a nap every hour or two instead of 8 hours of sleep at night, so he still had the other 8 hours of the day to himself. ERC dude bought a whole second house as a rental property, bought his wife a fancy Mercedes, has a brand new motorcycle for himself, etc. Story 54. Director of IT for a hotel chain. Grew up dirt poor, 9 kids, 1 X900 Scufty house, 1 bathroom. Fumbled my way through life until 38, then went back to school for IT. Each successive job, 5 in all, was a small increase. And then when I hit 21 hours in the business, it was a big jump plus bonuses. Story 55. Software development front end. Been doing it for around 10 years, and while the pay is nice, the job has really taken its toll. What was once a relaxed and interesting field has now become riddled with crunch times where we work late or on weekends, developing features that get scrapped before release, and dealing with arbitrary deadlines on features the users never asked for. On top of this, A lot of us are being forced into the office so we can Zoom our colleagues in a different office instead of just working from home. Story 56. I know a few people like this, and they are generally attorneys, doctors, or are in finance. I know a lot of people who make around that a few years into an accounting career. My closest friend makes that as a freelance computer guy. You call him with your problems, he shows up at your house and fixes them. He also has people who subscribe to on-call support so they can call whenever they need him. I've never made that much and don't expect to, ever. Story 57. Ask question for 300K plus. 200K is super normal for engineers, doctors, lawyers, special skills jobs like operating big specialized machines or working for big tech as scientist or researcher, etc., to name a few. All these pay good jobs regardless of state or country. 200K in any major U.S. metro area is the new 100K where you can live comfortably. Comfort goes exponentially down as you have dependents. Story 58. Not quite 200K plus, but I think this is impressive enough. I know an electrician in his early 30s, self-employed with no employees racking up 100K plus per year. Met the guy because I lived with him and his wife for 6 months as an Airbnb guest during a work trip to Belgium. The biggest workaholic I've ever met. In his 20s, he got a mortgage on an apartment and immediately rented it out. Once he got a stable enough income from it, he proceeded to do the same with another 2 properties and bought his own house. All the properties were eventually listed as Airbnbs and were all very successful. At the same time, his actual career escalated into big-time industrial installations. One of his biggest clients is a massive chocolate factory right by his house. The dude started as an electrician doing trivial jobs in people's homes, and after 15 years, he could retire and not have to work a single day ever again. Knowing the guy, I can safely say he will never stop, but that's some impressive stuff right there. Story 59, not 200K yet, but on track to clear 150 by end of year. Ended up getting super lucky landing a job as a business development manager for a prominent property restoration company. Few months ago, I was literally scrounging for nickels in a sales job in same industry. My job consists of networking and taking people out for beers, baseball games. Would highly recommend to anyone who has high social capabilities and not a lot of background in education. Story 61, 109, 112K, senior electrical mechanical engineer, plus 100K in my side LLC, aftermarket, CAN bus, FlexRay, reverse engineering, CHAS integration. 4-year bachelor's degree for the former, and a passion for car hacking, coding, motorsports for the latter. Just wanted to add my combined experience to say that your main career isn't always the way to get to 200K plus. Story 61. A friend of mine makes like 250K. This amount of money blows my poor ass mind. I mean, they make a majority of my yearly income in just the end-of-year bonus, lol. That said, they work in virology, vaccines, and testing, and are super smart. Every time I ask about something they are working on, I regret it because I don't understand a damn thing they are saying. So clearly they are smart AF and deserve that money. They also have worked on literal life-saving stuff, so it's a really cool job. Oh, also, they got a huge promotion a while back and apparently had to go through a super intensive 8-hour interview. I had one interview that was like 1 hour with 6 people and I wanted to run away. Story 62. I work full-time for a large corporation, I own a small business, and I own a consulting firm. I work 7 days a week and don't get enough sleep. I make most of my money from my full-time job. The small business doesn't make a ton, but it pays for my car and gas. The consulting firm is a newer venture and has been ramping up well. Story 63. 10 years in tech starting in IT, now in cloud consulting. Manager of a small team delivering cloud services. I do a lot of email and spend 6 hours a day on video calls. My role primarily consists of meeting with and managing our enterprise clients, ensuring we are delivering excellent services and making sure my team is happy and that they're taking vacation. Privately held tech consulting company, between 502, 0 employees, primarily remote. Story 64. Husband is a physician, makes 450K. But he took the long road. Didn't go to medical school till 26 after doing research for 2 years. Post-grad making 12R. Medical school was 4 hard years and 300K in debt. Residency was working 80 hard week at less than minimum wage. Then finally in attending, but we have my student loans and his medical school loans. We are still living in a 1BR apartment in a HCOL city, Because all of our money goes to our student loans, with forgiveness out the window due to this administration, we're truly now throwing every dollar we have at our loans. Story 65. My girlfriend got her doctorate of pharmacy and works for a big pharma company. She's on the medical information side, not sales. So she talks to physicians around the state about the drugs she works with, gets their opinions on the field, and hears their experiences with patients in prescribing, etc. Her base is like 180K SEO, but her bonus puts her over 200. Story 66, wealth advisor. Now own my own firm. Started when I was 19, making 17.2 HR, working 10 or 12-hour days, 6-7 days a week, doing relationship management, admin, input work for a mortgage bank. Moved to compliance making 45K at 21, then slowly went from a banker one and worked my way up at a larger bank. I broke 100K at 27 years old and 200K at 34 years old. I have securities licenses, no bachelor's degree, but I did manage to get an exception and now have an MBA. I worked more than my peers, having 2 jobs always, bartender, notary, or real estate agent on the side. I am also now on a private AI company board with equity comp. I bought my first house at 25, 915 6-foot condo, and just bought my 4th by age 40. I manage my own rentals. I am tired, but I am happy I worked so hard when I was younger versus partying, going out, hanging around. I am finally getting married, having a child at 40. Story 67, UX research, different from UX design. Generally need a degree in cognitive science or psychology or related field of study. Most people have at least a master's and many even a PhD. Entry-level positions are usually in the low 100K range, but senior positions at big tech companies have salaries in the 200K range, and total comp is even higher. You're not going to make engineer money, but it's good work, though these days the competition is fierce with the way the job market has been. Story 68. A guy I knew from college hits 350K on a year. He works for a company that trains service animals, and he specializes in making sure the animal is socialized. It's especially important for dogs that are going to help kids with autism and stuff like that, or help people with issues that have small kids. Either way, he very literally plays with dogs all day. Story 69. I honestly have been over the 200K, even 300K threshold many times in my career. I work in tech. I would say it's the most miserable time in my life. You're getting paid so much that anyone above you have insanely unreasonable expectations of you. You're constantly in crunch time, and they can't wait to replace you with someone younger and cheaper. And lifestyle-wise, it's very destructive, especially as a single man like me. The only positives that came out of it was that it helped me take care of my mother financially as she was fighting with cancer. Other that I spent money just in ordering out all the time. Others get to this salary with long, steady, and solid careers. But in tech, it's very, very volatile. Story 70, civil, wastewater senior engineer, and project director. 27 years experience. Broke 200K base salary this year. I can do the doer, shark, seller role, as well as lead all the disciplines, do the contracts, handle the clients, and mentor train staff, and do the management, project, financial, and schedule tracking and management. I refer to all that in summary as making smart people with poor social skills talk to each other. Not only is it true, it makes for much more interesting social conversations outside of work. I'm remarried now, but it was gold when I was single and messing with the various girls that came before my now wife. Story 71. Engineering middle management at big tech, making around 500K. Started as intern entry-level engineer at a company that no longer exists, making 45K as my initial salary. Moved to bigger company, FinTech, at 65K a year as an entry-level engineer. Continued to grow as an engineer over 3 years, ending at 80K a year, before transitioning to management due to opportunity on the team. Salary grew steadily over the years until year 8, where I was at 140K at the same company. Then decided it was time for a change and moved to a biopharma company making over 200K. Eventually landed my current role in big tech. Have been in engineering management for 16 plus years. Story 72, project superintendent for a large GCCM. My salary is base pay, plus traveler comp plus living subsistence, profit sharing, 5-ish% of base, bonus, 10-ish% of base, and company truck are additional compensation. Graduated with a BS in building construction from a public state school. I started as a field engineer and have been a traveler since day one. In the 15 years since graduating, I've lived in 8 states and moved 10 times. Work is typically fast-paced, constantly changing, and stressful. I like to joke that my job is putting together a 4D puzzle with directions while trying to get adult children to play nice and not on the carpet. My goal is a second career as an airline pilot, but I'm a few hundred hours short of the minimums. Story 73, web developer, not working for clients. I develop and sell products. You can sell a product over and over, whereas working for clients has a limitation of time. That is to say, products have higher earnings potential. No college, just an internet connection. Most learning resources and apps are free or inexpensive, generally earning between $250K, $320K the last decade. Health and disability insurance are expensive for the self-employed. I wear a lot of hats. I'm nearly burned out, too. Story 74. Not me, but I'm the sole employee of a licensed massage therapist. She peaked $215K last year. She owns her own brick-and-mortar practice. Granted, she works 4 maximum 10-hour days a week, so they're long and physically demanding hours, but it really pays off. Or at least it did. The overwhelming majority of our clients were VA patients, so it's not as lucrative at the moment with all the problems they're having. Story 75. Software product manager. I do a lot of admin stuff like coordinating meetings, conversations across multiple teams, and report to executive stakeholders. I write PRDs, product requirements, which devs turn into real features. I have to distill these from my own sense of how software and our tech stack operates, UX, UI, working with devs, and prioritize and estimate accordingly to deadlines. It is very fast-paced and somewhat stressful, but it is fun for me to be the nexus of UX development and technology. I am very organized and strategic planner, not good for folks who need strong direction or structure, as it is often, go figure out how to do X. Story 76, I feel one note that should also be considered. You have to be very good reliable at the job. Many people graduate with law degrees and don't make much money for a long time, if at all. You are paid well if you are known to be very good. In my industry, multimedia effects animation, many people brag about making over $200K a year. Most of us make less than $90K. Story 77. They leverage skills that are in high demand and are hard to get. A doctor goes to multiple schools and then has multiple years of residency before their career even really starts. A business owner has to have a diverse set of skills to recognize entrepreneurial opportunities. You could argue that a successful family farmer apprentices for literally decades until they take over the farm. The point is that it's not what they do, it's the demand for what they do. To make lots of money, you need to identify something in great demand, do that, and then charge for it. Story 78, digital product designer for a large fintech company. 14 years of experience in design and research. Base salary of $237K in the pom-pom. Restricted stock units adding about $150K per year extra on a 4-year vesting cycle with annual refreshers. Bachelor's degree in graphic design from State University. Position gives me good healthcare and decent 401K match as well. I live in a city with a medium cost of living and am in office 3 days a week. Story 79, EM physician here. I took a longer route and did banking straight out of college initially, but took prerequisites while working full-time, did well on the MCAT, and managed to get into medical school. 4 years of medical school, 3 years of residency, and now working as an emergency physician. Work about 14 shifts per month, 10 HR shifts and 260 HR. Made close to $460K last year with bonuses on top of my salary. Story 80. I sure wish these people's pay was justified by labor or by how hard and how much they have to think. Grinds my gears to think people can sit at a desk computer and generate that much wealth without literally sweating for several hours a day or building calluses on their hands. Physical labor should be worth more than none. Whatever wears the body out quicker needs to be the higher paying jobs. Story 81. As someone mentioned, location and cost of living matter a lot. Mid-30s, my gross is $120K, spouse is $100K, banking, medical. Household AGI is $175K. Household net worth $900K with a mortgage plus 2 cars. I still have student loans. Retirement household target, pie in the sky, is $6 million investable assets. Back to location and cost of living, mattering more than just a salary number. Our gross household income is 2.5 times the median of our metro area. Story 82, Field Applications Engineer, 170K base salary, but other benefits, bonuses and stock, not including things like health insurance, bring me closer to 260K. I'm technically part of sales, but my role is to demonstrate the company's technology and have educated conversations with engineers we're trying to sell to. If we win their business, I provide continued technical support while they integrate our products into their systems. I've heard people describe it as a rare extroverted engineering role. You're part salesperson, so you have to be able and willing to converse with people to begin with, while also being knowledgeable enough to have meaningful conversations with very smart people on the specifics. Story 83, if you asked me 3 years ago, 180K plus PFP as a GNC team lead, guidance algo development specifically, and functional manager at a large defense contractor, 15 plus years in industry as an aerospace engineer, and MS in aerospace Eng. 2 years ago, 90K, 50% of my previous salary, as I was a chemo patient on long-term medical leave for Hodgkin's lymphoma. Decided to use my minimal free time when not suffering and in pain from chemo side effects to study to become a financial advisor. Series 7, Series 66, and CFP. Now it's approx 250K LRs, varies based on monthly production as a financial advisor. And I'm cancer-free. Story 84. Senior principal scientist at a major biotech company. 265K YNR base pay plus 20% cash bonus and 25% equity bonus each year. The company I am at has a 401K with 9% contribution and matching up to another 6%. I have a PhD for reference and did 2 postdocs, one in academia and one in industry. I now have about 20 years of experience from first postdoc until now. Story 85, I made 250K or so a year before I quit. I worked almost 15 years in sales for electrical cable and equipment. I'd work with companies on large projects, think oil rigs, solar farms, large buildings, and so on the electrical side. I received almost 10%, sometimes more, of the profit I made. Often, given the work involved, my margins would average about 25%. It wasn't just counter sales, but often design and sourcing and so on. Imagine a project with 100 worth of cable and other electrical material. We'd make 250K on that, and I'd get a 25K check. These were paid monthly. Rarely did you get a project this big, but many 50K projects throughout the month would add up. Story 86. I see a lot of comments of folks looking for careers that don't require a college degree. I started in the trades 12 years ago as an apprentice, started out in non-union at 12-hour. Now in the union as a licensed journeyman, I make 118 First-year apprenticeships in the union start out paying over 40-hour, and you're getting school and hours towards your license. Union plumbers are one of the highest paid trades or jobs period in the country, but all union trades pay well with cost of living raises. Commercial construction is not the backbreaking nightmare that many think it is. If you're reading this thread thinking you missed out, look into trades. Story 87. I'm a software engineering manager making about 300K after RSUs and bonuses. I'm at a small cap company that's not primarily a tech company. The software engineering wing of the company is probably about 100 full-time employees with additional contractors. I was in a startup that got acquired and quickly moved into management. I manage 9 engineers personally and keep to a 40-hour week with unlimited PTO that I use fairly liberally. I have to. I get mentally drained by all of pretty quickly. Overall career is about 14 years now, starting in support engineering on a 30K salary. Salary rose up quite a bit for me in the last 5 years. I remember getting to 100K about 6 or 7 years ago at another startup, and it was a huge achievement. But as I moved into management and collected RSUs, the paydays started to ramp up. Only problem right now is I don't think I can switch jobs for a while. Layoffs constantly seem like they're around the corner. My network used to be the source of career progression, and now many of them are in similar areas that aren't hiring. The startup scene in my city has dried up, unfortunately. Otherwise, the work is pretty good, and the pay is great, so I can't complain much. Story 88, SaaS account executive for strategic accounts, 175K base salary, plus 175K commission. I started out going to school for pharmacy. I met a EVP who liked me while waiting tables in college, and she said, come work for her. So I dropped out of pharmacy school and come work for her. I joined as a sales development rep, 65K, 80-20, split 2010. Move up to account executive for SMB, 110K 60/40 split 2013. Move up to account executive mid-market, 146K 60/40 split 2016. Move to account management after layoff, 155K 60/40 split. Joined new company as account exec for strategic accounts at a mid-sized company, 350K 50/50 split 2019. I owed $2,000 in college loan when I left school. I only have a high school diploma today still. Story 89, field sales for a big tech company. Basically going door to door, talking to businesses and trying to get them to use our system. I should hit 200K to 250K this year. Sales is one of the only ways to make lawyer, doctor, engineer money with none of the schooling. Job security sucks and I'll be bouncing around every couple years for the rest of my career. But that's the game, and that's how you get ahead in this rat race. Story 90, I manage a team of people making 100K plus per year. I spend my time filling in for them, making sure they aren't fucked with, and they are working on the right things and that they have what they need. Sometimes deal with performance issues in HR or legal, but that is rare. But it's exhausting. It's like sharing in everyone's problems constantly. Constant frame shifting. Countless stakeholders always complaining or being pushy. Sometimes they have a point and you need to do something. I miss being an individual contributor, but the money is the only reason I deal with all the extra. Honestly, I don't know if the extra money was worth it. Story 91. Right end of the domestic labor market. Elite coders, surgeons, high-end attorneys, petroleum engineers, elite engineers, C-suite executives for most successful smallish businesses. Then owners, small business entrepreneurs who are successful, including very hardworking and lucky skilled tradespeople who have their own business now with more than one truck, employee, owner of the electrician or plumbing company, and so forth. Story 92, 242K annual base salary, 20 AMO. General counsel at an industrial manufacturing and construction company. That means I'm a lawyer and head of the legal department for a fairly big company. 700 plus employees, 300 millers in revenue, 30 or profit. I've been a lawyer for 9 years and done multiple kinds of law. That has allowed me to skip a few steps, but I'm also damn good at what I do and work my ass off. The only lawyers I know that are happy are in-house lawyers like me and some prosecutors, but they don't get paid well. But not everyone gets lucky enough to go in-house. If you're thinking about law, I would highly recommend that you reconsider. Do medicine, software, cybersecurity, or if you're hot, be a sugar baby, I guess, JK, don't do that. But anything but law. For those who might ask, why not law? It's not the stress exactly. It's who it turns you into, plus the stress. It starts with school. Everyone at law school was the smartest kid in every one of their classes, from elementary school through college. Everyone. Then you go from that to being maybe middle of the pack, a nobody, and it's super cutthroat to get even there. But you learn to think like a lawyer, be a super obnoxious and hypercritical overthinker. Then you get to a law firm or a government job or whatever, and it turns out law school taught you very little, if anything, about being a lawyer. But you're expected to know or learn the rules and start billing time, or charging people with crimes, or protecting kids from abusive parents, or some other super heavy thing at 25 years old. Don't get me wrong, I take a tremendous amount of pride in it, but imagine, if you will, keeping track of everything you do in 6-minute increments to get to 150 hours worth of billable hours of work a month. You can never get ahead. At very best, you are caught up until the first of the month when you are 150 hours behind again. It takes you 200 plus hours of actual work to get to 150 or 160 of billable time. This is not an exaggeration in any sense. Imagine also being the only thing between your client and 10 years in prison, or losing their home, or losing their business or kids. In my situation, I am constantly on the lookout for problems and watching for things that may become problems for my entire company. The mental burden is a lot. And now I'm also a hypercritical dick who has a ticking clock in my head and fucked up perspectives with time and money. For a long time, my health suffered a lot. I am only now learning to take care of myself again. Story 93. I'm a global category manager at a medtech company. I manage the supply base for all of our suppliers that sell us supplies and services for our global laboratories. It's technically a supply chain role, global procurement, but I have a mechanical engineering degree and started out as a project engineer. 15 plus years experience. It's exciting work, but it's frankly sort of nuts right now with tariffs. So much uncertainty and chaos, and we're a few steps ahead of the insanity that is about to hit the economy. Huge price hikes and supply chain shortages. Container ships coming in from China are half empty. So it's stressful. It's more fun at younger, less mature companies where you have more influence on shaping the organization and are not in a sort of late-stage capitalism situation where you are scraping the barrel for minuscule improvements in margins and profit. Story 94. Grandfather was a train engineer. Dad was an electrical lineman. I put myself through college and got a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree as business administration. Started at the bottom of a small tech company doing business development for sales for a couple of years, taught myself the Unix operating system, and jumped over to the technical side of the house, doing system integrations and build-outs, and then was asked to do internal trainings and certification trainings for our customers. After about 3 years, got promoted to VP of Customer Services out of the blue, and was on the exec team for 11 years as we grew, and then sold the company to a very large, well-known multinational company. Jumped into a C-suite role for a mid-sized company in a completely different industry for 5 years, corporate interior design and furniture, and now am back in tech working for a private equity-owned mid-sized software company as chief client officer. Story 95, 14 years of supporting the organizers, SHOC managers for software projects, and becoming an expert on the software for it. Unfortunately, that means I spend a lot of time arguing with PMs about how to PM and arguing with Scrum Masters about how to run stand-ups, when my job is, at best, meant to provide those folks with tools to do what they need to do. I clock 45 to 65-ish hours a week on WebEx and engage higher thought at most 30 minutes a month. Story 96, I externalize internal stakeholders and watch real-time stocks related to the internal assets. Family med-obstetrics doctor, I have a long-running joke about calling fetal heart rate tracings, baby stocks and babies internal stakeholders. C-sections are stakeholder meetings where I brought a knife, and vaginal deliveries are ones where a satisfactory deal was brokered to externalize a party without significant changes to a contract. I don't know anything about correct business mumbo-jumbo and plan to keep it that way. I work in a rural community and make $400–500K a year after 4 years of college, 4 years med school, and 3 of residency. I have the best job. Story 97, medical physicist. Working in healthcare mostly related to radiation for either therapy, cancer, or diagnostics. At minimum, physics minor, master's in medical physics, 2-year residency, paid training. The job market is very good as there's a shortage. In therapy physics, radiation oncology, a new residency grad gets around $190K a year based on data from all my friends who graduated in last year or 2 across the country. I recently finished my board exams about 8 months post-residency. Just in the last week, a friend urged me to send my CV to colleagues at other institutions, and within minutes was invited for a call, within minutes invited for in-person interview with reimbursed travel, and by the end of day was told I would be getting an offer. This happened twice in a week or so, an unexpectedly busy week. Offers were $270K NYC, $220K NJ, though they are considering my counters. And I do not think I am an exceptional candidate, at least on paper. Personal recs go a long way since it's a very collaborative environment. Again, it is a very good market. You should consider it if you have a good mix, not necessarily excellence, of math and science, practical thinking, attention to detail, collaborative work style, and desire to help. Bottleneck right now is residency. We just have way too many graduates and not enough residency slots. Match rate for grads is around 60% compared to like 95% MD match, leaving a lot of people having to find lower paid work until the next cycle, and a lot of them with large grad school debt. Story 98, in Australia, labor is well paid for. In Western Australia, a starter cleaner doing, say, 2 weeks on 1 week off roster will be paid $150K minimum. Any job in mining will pay the same, if not more, depending on what you do. Very minimal requirements, qualifications. OFC provided working rights allow it depending on visa and whatnot. Another one in Australia is also union EBA sites. Base labor hire rates in union sites start at $51 an hour, and on top of that, many allowances that add on to that hourly rate. So in some sites like Northeast Link, Victoria site allowance is $10 added to your base rate. You get crib allowance, and if you are interstate legally, they have to provide you adequate accommodation. Your own room, bathroom with shower, and if site is far, a vehicle. This and an additional $80 for each day you are away. After tax comes to about $585 a week on top of your week's pay. Comes to $180K a year, and if you choose to work Saturdays and occasional night shifts, which are often optional, can be $250K. Story 99 software developer in an upper middle technical management role. Salary around $230K. Options and bonus bring it to $400K most years. I'm 20 years in. I do like programming, but the role and corporate mentality can be pretty damn demoralizing at times. Also, I've had to spend a lot of my free time working. Wouldn't recommend, but wouldn't necessarily discourage either. By and large, I've felt compensated fairly for my efforts. Story 100, I'm in cybersecurity, managing technical alliances, planning, evaluating, and executing integrations and go-to-market motions with other technology companies, from some of the largest hyperscalers in the world to seed and Series A startups. My customer is our product team, but I work cross-functionally with sales, channel sales, marketing, product, and customer success. Have a BA, MA, and MBA, 14 years of work experience in China and the US. 200K plus isn't uncommon in SF Bay Area technology roles, especially with work experience or depending on role, i.e., software engineering or tech sales. Story 11 senior consultant in banking, similar to OPS manager 200K plus. Work 40-50 hours per week, demanding role within office hours. But I love it. Hard to describe what I do. But 99% is problem solving for the businesses. No qualifications, all learn on the job over the last 9 years. Started out in the contact center and jumped roles every 18 months. Starting salary was $55K and started to significantly jump after moving into leadership roles. Would almost say the first few years are the hardest, but if you can make it through, it's absolutely worth it. Story 12, I have a GED and make $250K. I run a safety company for a group of investors. Worked for a few companies in the industry, started contacting European companies to see if any wanted to open a company in the US. Found a group, stared at $68K. 9 years later, we have over 50 employees and 9 branches across the US. Sometimes it's hard to believe I got here from growing up in a trailer with a lot of nights with no meat for dinner to flying around and eating at the finest restaurants. Feels like a dream sometimes. Story 13, I'm in relationship building. I've done fundraising for several organizations and now work as a rep for a healthcare company. Salary ranges from $200K, $270K, depending on how successful I am. Super high stress and unhealthy eating and drinking habits, though. Not something I can imagine doing for 20 years as much as I enjoy it now. I just can't imagine being 50 and eating out 3 meals a day and happy hour almost every day. At some point, it's going to catch up to my body and mind.